All right. Great to be back again. I missed last week. I'm sorry about that. Seems like you had Sergio back, and I saw you being the host at the OSF, which is it's good to see you getting involved more than you normally do. Um, how you doing? How are you feeling this week? It feels like we've had another pretty sideways week in crypto, but maybe having a little bit of a flutter towards the end of the week finally.
Yeah, sort of been a little bit off screens the last 2 days because of the Zebu event in London, which I was at yesterday and today. I actually met tons of Real Vision people, like more than I met any other REKT people, which is kind of interesting. But it's nice to see there's lots of people in London. Something I'm confused about is we had that big drop, I think last night, right? Last night we went sub 59K. Is that just a
Yeah.
leverage wipeout, or I don't think people are really like moving that aggressively on this geopolitical news. It's just like a leverage collapse, right? Like a liquidity cascade.
We can get into it a little bit, but yeah, it's been another one of those weeks where I think we started the week slightly north of this, more towards 63K. Um, as the week went on, we kind of just went sideways, and then we had a little bit of a dip. We went below 59K last night. It did feel like the only headlines that I saw around that, which got people a little bit more sensitive, was the stuff around what's been going on in the Silk Road Bitcoin. So it looks like the US government now has the ability to sell just over $4 billion of the Silk Road Bitcoin. Now, previously, Trump had said they're not going to sell anymore if he gets into office. He wants to make sure this is ring fenced, but maybe they sell it before the election. Maybe they sell it after the election. Who knows? But it's not a great headline. That's basically now free to trade. That just over 4 billion worth of Silk Road Bitcoin. So I think that's got people a little bit nervous. And you saw Bitcoin slightly underperform. So I actually thought today we might see a headline. Silk Road Bitcoin moves out of wallet, starts to get moved to Coinbase, which we saw kind of earlier in the year with respect to Germany and also the other bit of the Silk Road Bitcoin. So, but we didn't, and now we've just kind of rallied back. There was obviously some pretty big headlines coming out of China. Again, seemingly they're going to put in another 280 billion of fiscal stimulus this time into the market. So people just getting bullish on global liquidity, bullish on the banana zone. So I think people are just getting tired of this. This has now been 9 months of range. We were here in February. 61K was literally where we were in February.
I do think, I guess that's a reasonable, like a big enough headline for people to panic. I really doubt they do anything with the government Bitcoin before elections. It just seems pretty crazy to make a decision on that now. Like for the potential Harris administration and existing Biden administration, they're obviously aware that whatever they do crypto wise has an impact on on the elections, which is pretty close right now. So making no decision doesn't create any incremental impact. Making a decision creates some volatility in that. So I just this close, 3 weeks out or whatever it is, 4 weeks out, it would just seem very, very strange to me for them to just start selling Bitcoin, I think.
Yeah, I also agree. I think it'd be very political, and it would also be kind of shooting Harris in the foot here. There was a piece even out yesterday saying that nearly 50% of investors in the US were interested in crypto ETFs, which kind of tells you that crypto is more mainstream at the moment. It's definitely moved more into the mainstream this election cycle, far more than I think most people predicted going into this. So the idea that suddenly now they would move to sell that in a tight race, right? This is already a very, very tight race. I don't think that's smart, but they may do it after the election. Who knows? Like it might be like a shot across the bow before if Trump was to get in or something like that, which wouldn't be great. But yeah, it does feel like that was the only headline I really saw. There was some, obviously, geopolitics. The world is still not a great place at the moment in various different places, and it did feel like that was going to flare up. But the Israel response to Iran seemingly has been delayed, and I think people were definitely cognizant of that, at least this time last week. But now it seems like that that may have been delayed, or it might be slightly different. It may not involve like the oil fields, or maybe more targeted. So I don't really know there, but it does feel as though crypto will sell off if there's any sort of major headlines around that, as it has done in the past. But yeah, this has definitely been a week of us going sideways again. I personally have been of the view, that September was the time to buy, that October, in the weeks leading up to the election, we would go towards all-time highs, and then we might break through all-time highs after the election, or on the election day, or the day after the election even. That's kind of been my playbook. I think we're still on track for that. It still looks like we've put in a higher low here, and it was a bit of a higher high, I would say. If you zoom out on this Bitcoin chart, it does feel as though we're in a decent spot there, that we're going a bit more sideways than at least this downward channel. And that move to 66K that we just saw was kind of a higher high versus that previous high of 64K. So, and if you look at it like that, then we've just potentially even just put in a higher low there at 59K. So that does again look a little bit like a setup of a cup and handle that we're coming towards the end of. What do you think is going to be the play-by-play for the next month?
Yeah, I agree. I think I had the same view as you. I think there was that point at the beginning of September when everyone was just like bearish and down in the dumps. And I think we were saying on the show, if you're going to take a crack at the market, that was the point ahead of elections. And my expectation was that we would rally through September, October, and then the election day is whatever it is. So I think I still have that view. My inclination is to still de-risk a little bit into the elections. Not because I'm like bearish afterwards, but just because I'm uncertain. Like I just don't have a strong conviction. Like I'm bullish, but right now compared to this time last year when I was like max bullish and really truly all in because I thought the risks were very asymmetric to the upside. It's not as clear to me now. I'm definitely like bullishly biased, but my inclination is to like take some risk off, in the week before elections or something like that. And
Really?
yeah. And then if Kamala Harris wins, I think we'll have like a knee-jerk reaction lower, which I think you meant to buy that dip. I wouldn't be surprised if the price action on the day of her winning is we whipped down like 15-20% and we end the day unchanged. I can see that sort of price action from her winning. And so I'd want to have some powder dry to buy that dip. If Trump wins, I think we just go a lot higher, but I'll still have some skin in the game there. So that's kind of
I guess I'm a little bit more wary of Trump winning it, and then we see like a gold candle, because it's taken a long time. It's taken a lot to get through the 71.5K area. Like, look at that chart. We hit it. I think it was over 10 times. This is obviously a hard time frame, but during that period, and we couldn't break through it. So it does feel like we're gonna have something pretty monumental for people to get super bullish. But I agree. Like, if the Democrats win, then I do think you'll see a bit of a dip, and that's definitely a dip to buy in my opinion. At least in Bitcoin. I think in altcoins it could be, because there'll be more questions about whether you can push through regulation. But it does feel as though Bitcoin would definitely be a buy on any major dip on the back of that. Just touching upon that slightly, though, it does look as though Trump is starting to pull away at least a bit more in the election odds. You obviously have Polymarket. You have a few other prediction market providers now in the US. Polymarket has Trump as a 10-point lead. Now it's much closer in some of the other ones. It's more like a one point lead, 2-point lead in some of the others. Nate Silver still has Kamala ahead by I think 2 points, but his model is slightly, I wouldn't say backward looking, but it's not. It needs to be refreshed fairly regularly, and you've seen big swings on the back of that. So I'd be unsurprised, because it does seem like Trump is starting to pull away in some of the swing states. So I don't know. Maybe that's also a reason why we've bounced back a little bit as those sort of headlines have rolled in over the last few days. I do think if he does continue to pull away in the prediction markets, maybe towards 55-60%, then we'll probably see a rally into that election day. Now, I remember these prediction markets. I remember them back in all the other previous elections, and they haven't necessarily been the best they never thought Trump would win the last one, right? I remember staying up late because it was late when those sort of time would come through when we were in London trading, and it was like a massive shock when Trump went in. So I don't know what to make of this, but I do think we could see a bit of a rally into the election if he pulls away ahead in those prediction markets.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. I'm a bit curious about the differential between Polymarket and what Nate Silver is saying and the other stuff. On the one hand, people are saying, well, at least on Polymarket compared to polls, people are betting with real money and it means something. But it doesn't take that much capital to move these markets on Polymarket, right? So, if you and you're seeing crypto move with these odds. So if you really want, if you're like a big whale, you could just like jack up like the Polymarket odds by placing a large bet, whatever, and then make more money on like crypto portfolio and then sell that, and it opens up to a lot of manipulation, I think. So at the beginning I thought, oh, Polymarket's great because at least it's real capital that's being staked at these odds, but at the same time that also allows for manipulation. I'm not to say that polls aren't manipulated either, but I'm a bit wary of taking the Polymarket odds as like this is the highest probability outcome sort of thing, although the most representative.
I completely agree. We've spoken about this before. Like they can be swung, and I remember when in the past, it's actually been spoken that even Democratic special interest groups were coming in to like move those markets before, and there's been criticism. I do think crypto leans right, particularly for this election, just because of distrust from the previous Biden administration's approach to crypto. I don't know if that's like an always thing, but it definitely feels like that's this cycle. So I think maybe that's part of it in the Polymarket odds, that you have this like more right-leaning bias, and some of the other ones are a little bit closer. But the Nate Silver model is a little bit difficult. I do think it's a little bit backward looking, and not to get so political, but I do think the odds market is slightly predicting here that we've still got 5 more weeks of the election, and she's not necessarily performing that well in many of the interviews and stuff, because she's kind of rested on not giving out that much policy before the election, because she obviously came in quite late, and that's meant that she's looking slightly weaker. At the moment, she's looking weaker as the race goes on with some of those interviews. So, and that shows up in a lot of the betting markets, but not necessarily in Nate Silver's models. So I think there's part of it there, but we'll see. I just think from a purely financial perspective, I do think that if his odds continue to rise, we'll see a rally in crypto markets into that election.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think, I'm still sort of somewhat of the view that even if he wins, we'll see a move higher, but that ends up being sort of like a sell the news event, because I think it will be a while before, number one, it's a while before he gets inaugurated. That happens in February. And then number two, does he actually go out and do any of the stuff he's saying? Like, how long does do these things take to implement? I guess it doesn't take long to not sell the Bitcoin, but does it take a long time to classify the Bitcoin as a national reserve? That's the thing that I'm a bit worried about. Just as a counterpoint to the Trump rally. Also, not only that, but it's going to cause inflation. Probably he'll be obviously be aggressively pushing for lower rates. But yeah, I know that's just like the
I know we're traders, and we're particularly mean reversion sort of traders. We come from credit, so you're always fading. You're always fading any sort of move. I do think that crypto's been a coiled spring this year. And it also, what I know about crypto is, even if you look at that chart from February, right, that move from February to all-time highs, and even before that from like November, the moves higher are so parabolic in this space that I don't often fade them when they feel like they have momentum, because they can just keep going. And that momentum is, that's when the FOMO starts. That's when it starts to hit CNBC News. That's when it starts to hit Bloomberg, and people start to text you being like, oh, hey, this will back on. So I tend to find that crypto is crypto trading is immense pain during sideways chop, followed by complete euphoria, which can often last like 3-4 months. So if we do get a big rally on the back of Trump, I'm not fading. I'm really not. I think you could even get like a left translated sort of cycle there even. Like we could even go up towards like 125 to 150K and then spend the rest of the year, spend the rest of 2025 realizing that Trump's probably not going to come in day one and do this sort of stuff. It's not the top of his agenda. And that maybe you have like a split Congress and getting through crypto policy is not an easy thing to do. So I wouldn't be fading a Trump win. That's basically what I'm saying. I think it could. I think it. This is why I wanted to go max bullish in September. We've done enough of this chop. Like we've got global liquidity going higher at the moment, and if you can get a situation here where you can push, like people can at least have the hope of crypto policy in the US and the hope of even a Bitcoin reserve before he even gets into office, I think that's where you want to be buying. You know, that's where the hope is at peak. Trump's going to change everything. So that's my view.
I guess yeah, I don't disagree. I guess I'm just like assigning a lower probability of that happening, and that's not to say like I'm going to be fully stabled or going short or anything like that. Like I'm always going to be long, but I think I'm not going to be like balls deep long like I was last year. I think that's what the point.
I'm max long. I am max long now. I was defensive. What I would consider defensive, and up until September, particularly in that March to September period, or maybe more April. I definitely took some pain when Solana came down to like 160, 170. But now I think it's the time to get long. I really, really do.
All right.
We'll see about this at the end of the year.
The thing is, even if we go a lot higher, it's not like I was wrong. I just wasn't as long as I could have been, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into some more headlines of the week because we did have, let's say, a few things that can get you bullish aside from just the elections which is coming up. Although I think we will have a little bit of volatility around that, whatever happens. We already kind of touched upon what's going on with the Silk Road Bitcoin, so it does feel as though a decent clip of that could be up for sale. We've debated whether that would be before the election or not. On the other side of that, you did have Mt. Gox delaying their repayment for another year. So that's around 2.2 billion of Bitcoin, which is still to be repaid. This is kind of annoying because I think a lot of this has been paid out, and this is really just like some people who decided to get it back through different exchanges have now been delayed another year. So it's October 31st, 2025. This will probably now be after FTX starts to repay. So again, this is a slightly bullish scenario here for crypto, even if you do get that selling from the Silk Road Bitcoin. The other big headline that we saw this week was the HBO documentary, which was kind of ridiculed within crypto circles, but there was I would say not a terrible documentary done by HBO, where it went into the potential people that could have been Satoshi, and came up with a name which I don't think many people had on top of their list. You have people like Hal Finney, Szabo, Adam Back, and they kind of identified this guy, Peter Todd, who was a Canadian developer who was very young at the time. I think, yeah, he was a teenager when this white paper was written. And they basically identified him because they felt like a reply to a post that he had done, I think back in 2010, seemingly sounded like it was an extension of a post from Satoshi. And they felt as though he must have forgot to log out of the previous account. So it felt loose. It kind of got ridiculed in crypto circles, even on the back of that. You can look into it. It's definitely worth looking into. I think at the start of this, there were a number of different people being named. I think Len Sassman was top of the list for a long time. Adam Back was, I think, number 2, and Nick Szabo was number 3. I think those three all have a much better shout than this guy. Did you get to watch the documentary, or did you just look at the findings?
I just looked at the findings. I've not yet watched it. Yeah, I've read the commentary around it. I actually think it's Len Sassman. Like, having read around it, it just seems way too much of a coincidence that he passed away about 2 or 3 months after Satoshi said he was leaving, and then nothing's happened since then in the Satoshi wallets. Like I feel like Satoshi's like not around right now. That's what I think. So that would be my guess. That's some combination of like him and Hal Finney. I think that would be my guess.
I think it's Adam Back. I think it's Adam Back. But Len Sassman is an interesting one. There's a lot of different things here. Like he was Satoshi wrote in British English. There was a big expectation that they probably came from an academic field, just given the way that the Bitcoin white paper was written, and both of those kind of fit the bill there. That Len Sassman was kind of a vocal critic of Bitcoin after it came out, and he also worked very closely with his wife, who up until now has basically failed to deny, but also failed to say that she thought that Len Sassman was Satoshi. I think those are the top two.
I think the most, I want to use the word beautiful, but I don't want to speak about someone passing away to be beautiful. But I'm just saying, like, the most like proven way of decentralization is for Satoshi to no longer exist, to have passed away, right? And for the whole thing to be functioning and working and getting to where it is today. I think that in itself, in sort of like a satisfying way, proves the whole system. And if you're really a purist, that's what, it's not what you'd want to see, but you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but then surely his wife has the hard drive. Who knows?
Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she never knew.
Maybe she never knew. Maybe she never knew. Maybe she never knew. But yeah, that is one of the debates. Obviously, Len Sassman has died. Adam Back is actually the second guy in the background there of that picture in the bottom right. My guess has always been him. He's made a lot of money out of Bitcoin, and I think if you made it and you wanted Satoshi to be left untouched, you're probably going to make some money on the side, and then you don't mind leaving the Satoshi wallet, right? Like, but yeah, I think it's definitely between Adam Back and Sassman. I don't think it's this guy. I don't think that the Bitcoin white paper was written by a teenager. But it's definitely worth watching. It's a super interesting documentary, and I do think that if Bitcoin goes to $1 million, I think Satoshi becomes the richest man in the world. Obviously, that depends if Elon hits like $1 trillion by then, but there's going to be a lot of questions about this if Bitcoin continues to run. That's for certain. Then we'll go on to Sui. Again, Sui's been dominating, I think, the L1 space. Like, while everything else has been going kind of sideways, you saw USDC go live on Sui this week, actually on mainnet there. It's gone back up towards this over $2 range, which it kind of hit a ceiling of recently, which is around 20 billion FTV. Obviously, there's been some decent unlocks, actually, even over the last month in Sui. It's definitely something to be aware of if you're a holder, but this one just doesn't seem to stop. Whenever I think it's run up too much, or maybe it's going to take a breather, people are just buying it. It does feel as though there's rotation out of some of the other ones. I think the most obvious one is ETH here, but people are definitely viewing this more and more as the trade for 2025. Have you bridged any money to Sui? Have you been playing around with it at all?
Nothing so far. Kind of kicking myself a little bit, like when it was a sub $1 after it. When it had that initial pump and everyone was speaking about it, and then it dropped back down. I thought, wow, this could be the time to get in, but I didn't. Since then, it's done about a 2x, which is pretty good for like in the L1 space, I guess. Like it's outperformed most L1s. I do think it does really seem to have a growing narrative. I mean, this must be the third or fourth week in a row we've spoken about Sui, and I think that's a testament to the mind share it seems to be capturing. I'll say what I said last week when you weren't here. I mean, call me a skeptic, but I just don't really see much difference between any blockchain right now. Like every chain does the same thing. They're all quick, whether you go to Solana or Sui or an L2. They're all relatively cheap now. It's just about which one captures the most mind share and gets the strongest community and gets the best marketing. And I think Solana did that really well in the last 18 months, and Sui is showing early signs of being able to do that. And I think you just need to get a bit of culture on the chain. And there are meme coins now that trade on Sui. There was one that went pretty high. I think a couple that went to north of $100 million market cap. I don't know if NFTs are active yet on Sui or not, but they haven't been like the main part of this cycle. So yeah, you can see that the early signs are there, and I think the right people seem to be endorsing it. So yeah, it could be interesting. It might be worth having skin in the game in that one, I think.
I've got a little bit of money now on Sui. It does as soon as the meme coin ecosystem started to heat up a little bit, which we'll maybe get into a bit in the left curve corner. I definitely started paying attention a bit more because I think you need people to actually be spending the currency for it to really have that sort of parabolic run. But to me, Solana is just so far ahead on the adoption cycle compared to these others. Is this a 40 billion versus Solana at like 80 to 90? I don't know. To me, I still think Solana looks the most undervalued, but at the moment, Sui's having its moment in the sun. I don't even own any Solana right now, just because I feel as though, well, I don't own that much Solana right now, but because I felt as though those L1 battles were becoming more like this, at least from a price perspective. But if I take a step back just from a user perspective, I just think Solana's just a different scale of adoption. But so it does feel like it's definitely getting some decent adoption. Solana, as we've spoken about, has got some unlocks coming from FTX coming in Q1, which whether you like it or not, I do think people will start to make noise about it in Q4. And I think that's when I'll probably move back into Solana, probably back in Q1 when if there's any sort of FUD around that. Because for me, I just think it's clear and away the strongest L1 this cycle. Okay, so we'll move on from Sui, which seemingly comes up every single week. I think the next major one, which is kind of a bit of the left curve corner to what's been going on with Murad. Murad is become a bit of an infamous name in crypto. Maybe not infamous, but he was a well-known trader from a couple of cycles ago, had a Bitcoin fund, which I think moved into altcoins. Funding kind of went a bit south, has reemerged this cycle as a big believer in cult meme coins. I don't know if you touched upon it last week, but he did a speech at Token 2049 in Singapore just last month, which kind of went a bit viral. And it was the idea that we're going to have billions of memes, meme coins, and that they will slowly morph into more serious things than they are right now. That you'll have 100 huge meme coins, and that the top 20 will be these cults, which are kind of have this almost religious aim to them. Well, not religious aim, but they have very, very strong aim to them and has almost like a cult-like, religious-like following around them. And he identified, I think it's around 10 coins that have made this list. And over the last 2-3 weeks, this list has gone absolutely bonkers. SPX I think is the biggest one that's done a 75x over the last month. Pretty much every single other coin on this list is up 3 to 10 times, I would say. We actually had him. We interviewed him on another show I did on Wednesday. Very eloquent guy. I think probably speaks to the idea that meme coins are becoming a bit more serious. You're starting to see a few more funds come into them and invest in them. What do you make of this thesis? It's slightly different, I would say, to how other meme coins have been built around.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything he's saying, by the way. It's this idea of cults. I mean, Bitcoin is the original cult. And I think the idea of having the type of holder who almost doesn't even really care about making money, they just want to prove a point or hold the token or stock. Think about GameStop as like some sort of like rebellion play. So I completely agree with it. I just don't think he's saying anything new. And I think people would have had this thought process. I mean, this is what we talked about on Real Vision this time last year. Like it's the same thing. But I think he's done a good job of like packaging it up into a format where people can understand points very clearly. And I completely agree with everything that he's saying. Like those are the things that you need to look for in terms of finding things that could potentially go parabolic, finding meme coins that could potentially go parabolic. Do I agree with all of his selections? No. Like, I think some of them, yes, some of them, no. But everyone's going to obviously have a bias towards their own bags and favor the things that they like. The main thing I'm trying to figure out is he early, mid, or late to pushing this stuff out aggressively? That's what I don't have a great handle on at the moment. And my gut is we probably will see memes go higher. I think we could potentially see like a big blow off top on meme coins. I don't think we'll see like the 8-figure, well, it's not 8-figure, is it? It's 11-figure market caps that he's talking about. In terms of things being tens of billions of dollars, I don't see that. I do think we could see a few coins that are north of $1 billion, but there's not going to be a ton of liquidity there, and I don't think you'll have an amazing opportunity to monetize. I think it'll be pretty quick, and you'll have to make sure you take it. So my guess is, I think he's right. I think he's identified the right sorts of characteristics, and they're all the characteristics that I would have look for in meme coins or NFTs or anything really. It doesn't have to be specifically be meme coins, but I just question whether it really is as early in that cycle as he is portraying it to be. And man, I hope he's right. I really hope he's right, because it would be, what an incredible environment it would be to trade, and I'm obviously positioned for it. Like, I really 100% hope he's right, but I'm not in full belief that we'll see the levels he's talking about. But I do think we could see things have a big move higher from here still.
Yeah, look, it's a seductive narrative. I think people like the idea of really believing in things in crypto. I do think it's a slightly dangerous narrative as well, because this kind of, the thesis behind this is actually kind of puts meme coins on their head. Like, I wouldn't say that Doge or Shib or Pepe would have ever gotten onto his list with the sort of thesis he does. He focuses on very low hold account coins, which have a mission around them, and as they drive higher, he seemingly seems to value the ones with the least number of holders. Now, the reason that can be super dangerous is because you have a bunch of whales who all have a ton of the coin, and they can dump on followers, or they can dump on people who come in quite late. Whereas other major meme coins have hundreds of thousands, millions of holders. So you have coins like Doge, I think has in the millions of holders. Shib definitely has in the millions. Pepe, I think, is in hundreds of thousands, I think close to 300 to 500,000. Whereas SPX, I think, has around 10,000 holders, and is at 600 million, which tells you that I think each holder has 60K of the coin on average, which is very, very high. And I think that's slightly dangerous. So I think it's an interesting narrative, and it's not that I don't agree in the general thesis around meme coins. We've said that blockchain in general is one of the major use cases, in my opinion, is the tokenization of crypto culture. I think alongside payments, alongside digital gold, alongside maybe some of the utility stuff, but I do think tokenization of crypto culture, whether it's via NFTs or memes, is something that crypto has become incredibly good at. And I think I'm always going to be a believer in that being a dominant trend. But this is, they've all run up absolutely massively, because they're very tightly controlled meme coins, and they're getting to the hundreds of millions. And there will be a point where he comes to sell these, and it could all get a little bit dangerous. But we have seen a massive shift back into meme coins over the last 3 weeks on the back of this, and most meme coins are up a decent amount. Huge bounces. When most altcoins, they failed to hold on to that altcoin bounce, right? We talked about altcoin season. There's been some altcoins like Sui and Tau, which have done relatively well, and like maybe the odd DeFi coin, but nothing compared to some of these mid-cap Solana meme coins.
One thing I would say about what Murad is doing, and the reason why it could actually work, is because all you need is people to believe. And I think he's making people believe. He's even making me believe. Like, I'm, sometimes thinking, here I got to my profit target, I should sell something. But what if he's right? Like he's making people believe, or he's creating that thought in people's minds at a mass scale now. And that alone can be strong enough to carry this stuff to crazy levels, I think. So that's the one thing I would say, because it's, it's gone from meme coins kind of feeling a little bit dead to now everyone just having this belief in it, which really is channeled and pushed by Murad. So you never know. You never know this stuff. Like, never say never. We've seen crazy shit happen before in crypto, but also in markets. If you look at GameStop, for example, so you never really know.
Yeah, but pay attention. That's all we're saying. Like, it's definitely something to pay attention to. He's become the main character, they would say, in crypto Twitter, and wrestled that pretty aggressively since that interview. The other interesting thing I thought about all this is all the other top meme coins which are on the list are still a decent amount below their all-time high. With Pepe, Doge Shib, like they haven't really taken part in this. So it's been this mid-cap meme coins, and I think that probably speaks to what's been going on with token proliferation this year.
Yeah.
When these all get to hundreds of millions, there will just be another set that kind of emerge, won't there? And then who knows if they'll hit an all-time high again. But Murad, pay attention. Must stop Murad on X. You can see these crazy price targets, but it does feel as though people are believing it. And we'll see where that goes. OSF, I know you wanted to maybe shout out the crypto gathering that Real Vision is set to do.
Yeah, we just want to mention Real Vision is organizing an in-person event. It's going to be the crypto gathering. It will take place in Miami at the end of January. I think it's January 30th to Feb 1st. So if you want to attend, for details to secure tickets, head over to realvision.com/CG2025. That's realvision.com/CG2025. I'm going to be in that part of the world around then, so I'm definitely going to be attending. Hopefully I'll see you there as well, Michael. But yeah, will be a good one.
Okay, great. I think we'll have maybe one more topic I think we have to do until we get into the left curve corner, which is really what has been going on in Tau. I don't know if you've looked at Tau, which is kind of the AI meme coin, which has been the other coin alongside Sui, which has been doing relatively well. But what we saw this week was, what we saw yesterday was this huge announcement by Tesla moving into robotics and self-driving cars, and I think you've seen a bit of resurgence again in the AI coins again today. But I would say Tau is a coin that I've been looking at. Don't know if you have, OSF, but I do think it's one to maybe pay attention a little bit more to. I kind of felt like everything was a meme in AI crypto up until Tau. It's now started to dominate all of these other coins in terms of mind share are meme coins. Tau is the only other altcoin which is kind of up there, fighting alongside it. It's an L1 Bitensor, which is built off the Bitcoin protocol, so it's going to have a halving cycle. Today it's up at 620, which I think is close to its all-time high again. But this alongside Sui is one that's been bouncing very, very aggressively. If you go back over the last 3 months on this chart, I think it's probably the best way to look at it. This coin, yeah. So this was down at 200 in August. So it's done a 3x over the last few weeks. It's basically in the line that AI is going to increasingly look towards open source models rather than closed source models. And Tau basically purports a system with which to reward different machine learning AI, essentially. So the rewards that are given will be given on the best resources or best answers to different AI questions posed. And this would basically help to speed run some of the training data which is given to various different machine learning or AI models. I would say it's Bitcoin for AI. It's basically how it's been spoken about. They have an LLM, I think, and they have an image generator already as one of the nodes or subnets on the ecosystem. They have a number of different smaller integrations at the moment. So it's kind of still a bit of a show me story in crypto and in, let's say, applications. But the idea is that this might provide a framework with which you could hook up various different AI models and improve them at a much faster rate than you would with closed source models, which is kind of what OpenAI is looking to do right now, where it has to like buy data from different sources at the moment, and it's a very, very slow and expensive model. This allows for like a more open source way, kind of similar to how Facebook's doing it with their Llama model. But then you'd have rewards given to the best answers and also the best resources given to the whole network. I think it's interesting. I've been looking more and more about it. I don't think this is just like a meme. I do think that if you are bullish on AI being a quadrillion-dollar industry, this kind of purports a framework with which that could be improved at a much faster rate and in an open source way, which I think a lot of people are very, very bullish on open source tech, even when it comes to AI. But it's been strange that so far AI has felt very, very closed source in how it's been built. And Tau alongside, let's say, a Facebook model, I think could lead to a very, very strong outcome. Have you looked at it? Maybe you just looked at it from the chart perspective, but I think this one could keep going. That's basically what I think. Well, at least I think it's worth paying attention to. When you see that sort of strength from the lows, and everyone was talking about it after Token 2049, I thought it was just because when you hear about something like that, you're like, well, what have they actually produced? And there's not a lot going on right now. Like I said, they have an image generator. I think they have an LLM. They have a few other smaller integrations. But it does feel as though if they get any sort of big partnerships, or they start to see more GPUs move onto the ecosystem, I do think they could build something pretty strong here. And I think it's worth taking a look at.
Yeah, I think of all the sectors within altcoins, I think if I was to put money in one, it would be AI. And I think picking like the real AI coin within that sector makes sense. Just from a top-down perspective, I don't know a lot about Tau itself, but it's not for me.
Not for you. Crypto AI has been a bit of a it's been a meme, so to speak.
I think it's a meme. Yeah, it's a bit of a meme, isn't it? Yeah.
But I don't think this one's a meme. I don't think this one's a meme. I think it's worth looking at it. Maybe we'll talk about it a bit more in a month's time and see where the price is there. But this has now reached like a $4 or $5 billion market cap. If you get really, really bullish on AI meets crypto, I think this could pull many multiples. And I just get increasingly just so bullish on, well, what I really get really bearish on is population dynamics. That's what I get really bearish on. Like most of the Western world and many developed economies are kind of below a 1.6, maybe sometimes even below like a 1.2 birth rate, which leads to 50 to 80% population decreases over 3 generations. It's huge decreases. And I think the only solution to this is AI, robotics, and probably massive amounts of QE. So I think you can get very, very bullish on crypto. Well, most probably Bitcoin in that QE world. But I do think that you can get very, very bullish on these AI, robotics sort of things over the medium term. And if crypto can form the sort of model with which you can improve them even better, then I think you're onto a bit of a winner. Or at least it's a meme that can keep going.
Yeah, I understand that. I agree. It's like it's one of the strongest narratives that also works in the normie world, and very few crypto narratives work in that world as well. So again, top down, I do see it. Do you want to move on to left curve corner, then questions?
Let's go on to left curve corner and then questions. Okay, so the top 5 for left curve corner. We haven't done this for a little bit, have we?
Yeah,
It's been a little bit of time. So number 1 is SPX, which is the coin that we touched upon earlier. This is one of the major coins on Murad's list. It came out that he owns millions of dollars of this coin, but SPX is a coin which is looking to flip the S&P 500. It hit $600 million this week. It overtook MOG, which is one of the other top coins on ETH. It has done a 75x in a month and did sell off pretty aggressively yesterday, but we ran it today. definitely one to look at on Murad's list. Number 2 was Murad's wallets actually got doxed. This is, again, why we know his holdings. ZachXBT came out this week, which is a very well-known crypto sleuth, and doxed 11 of Murad's different wallets. And we saw $24 million worth of meme coins within them. He has said previously he's not looking to sell out of them until next year and will DCA when he does so. That being said, there was a lot of questions about the morality of doxing someone wallets like this, and there's a lot of back and forth on the timeline about it. Number 3, we saw Solana meme coins break $10 billion, which is kind of a crazy stat given Solana's market cap is close to 80 to 90 billion. So meme coins are now making up a huge bit of the Solana ecosystem. Obviously, the top ones are WIF and Bonk, but a number of those other ones on Murad's list, as well as a number of the mid-cap Solana meme coins soared this week. And I think we could be heading closer to $11 billion relatively soon. Interestingly, as we already touched upon earlier, we also saw a bit of a move higher in Sui meme coins. We saw different memes around Mudang and a couple of other popular internet memes crop up on Sui this week. Number 4, we saw meme coin NFTs. So again, alongside this Murad list, he also did a list for NFTs. And a lot of the NFTs associated with some of these top meme coins also did many multiples. We had NFTs like Mog Auras, Project Eons, now doing 5 to 7 X's across the week. These previously were not among any of the major NFT projects, and they've slightly caught the market off guard. And then finally, we saw another X copy, one of one sale for 800 ETH. This was the highest X copy sale we have seen, I think, in a couple of years. This was a piece from 2020 and was bought, I believe, for around $200,000 back then. Okay, any of those you want to touch upon?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about the Murad stuff already, I think. So what do you think
Maybe
about
the meme coin NFTs? I think it'd be quite interesting to speak upon those. Like, what do you make of all of these?
So these are NFT projects that have occurred after meme coins have launched, right? Or vice versa as well.
And you obviously, we have an NFT project, REKTguy, which is kind of got that meme coin aspect to it as well.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think there are probably lots of NFT projects out there with like very strong, sticky communities, but have failed to get that mass growth effect because once your NFT goes to a certain price, it's very hard for an additional person to buy it because your cheapest NFT maybe like have gone from being just a couple of $100s to maybe a couple of grand or maybe even tens of thousands. So I think having a meme coin aspect helps because you're able to have loads more holders. I mean, most NFT projects are what 10K collections and they probably have 3,000 to 5,000 holders, whereas most meme coins on Solana have 10 to 20,000 holders, and the top meme coins have 100,000 plus holders. So it's a big scalable effect you're able to have by having your NFT, which is sort of like this is the sentimental part of the cap structure, if you like. And then you have a meme coin, which kind of allows you to expand and grow. So I like it as a construct and as a setup. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think it makes sense too. I actually think you get even stronger communities than NFTs. It's interesting to see, again, this has kind of caught the market off guard a little bit here, right? We obviously come from the NFT world, and some of the NFTs did the meme coin afterwards, and none of those really worked as well, right? Or at least Ape was probably the most famous one of those, which is kind of more of a utility coin. I guess most of these were utility coins, but it does feel as though these could be on for a little bit of a run. So if you're in the NFT streets, I think maybe pay attention to these. That they're kind of further down the list when it comes to floor price, but you can see these sort of many multiple moves. Obviously, things like Mogor did like a 7x in a day. Some of these are up 10 to 20x, I think, over the last month. So definitely something to pay attention to.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, all right. Let's go into the questions then.
Questions, yeah. Just before we get to the questions, we want to showcase some more pro crypto content on Real Vision. Earlier this week, we had Ash Bennington do a deep dive into Deepin. He had two builders and an investor on the show to discuss the merits and potentials of Deepin. So definitely check that out if you're interested in that. You can access it on the Real Vision website, which is realvision.com, with a pro crypto subscription. And let's move on to the questions. So the first one, this is from Peter. When you look at the global net liquidity on TradingView, it seems to have dropped since the start of October. Any idea why that may be? I actually didn't even notice that.
So volume was that?
The global net liquidity.
Global net liquidity, I don't think it's decreased since the start of the year, but then M2 has picked up fairly aggressively over the last 2 or 3 months. That's mainly been driven by China. So you obviously had the QT period coming towards an end, and then it's swung up fairly aggressively over the last month or two. So I think if you look at Raoul's charts on global liquidity, you can see this big turn up. And if you to type in global liquidity, you'll see over the last 2-3 months you've started to see that turn back up pretty aggressively. And once that starts turning back up again, it can turn up. It can turn up again for many years. So I think people are seeing that turn in the global liquidity over the last few months.
Yeah, my thought was perhaps China as well. That was my initial thought when I read that question. Next question from Jonathan. I'm considering selling my ETH due to its weak performance this year, but reinvesting 20 to 30% in meme coins on ETH for leverage exposure without the liquidation or interest risk, sort of like an option style play. Do you think this is a viable strategy for Ethereum upside for the coming months?
I think meme coins. I think I've said this on the show before. I'm not bearish on ETH as an ecosystem. I just don't think ETH itself is necessarily the best asset to even play in ETH right now, because so much of the volume is going to the L2s, which means so many of the fees are going to the L2s, and the burn ecosystem that people were relying upon isn't happening as planned. That being said, like the TVL is still absolutely huge compared to other chains, and there's still a lot of money that can go into ETH meme coins, particularly if people get more bearish on ETH. So I actually quite like the ETH meme coins. I think you've seen some huge run-ups in those, and that you generally have seen you don't get hundreds of thousands of new meme coins produced every single week on ETH. So when one catches a bid, it normally has a pretty diehard community, and it can go relatively high.
Yeah, I agree. I've done a sort of done a similar thing this year, and I like the meme coins on ETH because I feel like there's less competition than there is on Sol. I think you're choosing between 3 to 5 coins, which I do think all have upside. They've all outperformed ETH massively, and they seem to actually move higher with the market and not just with the ETH. So, and then if ETH actually does really well, I think they would go even higher. So I do like that. Like my biggest position is in MOG, which is a sort of like $600 million market cap coin on ETH. And I think for me, that's the sweet spot. Like if ETH ever does rebound, I think you can do really well on that. And if ETH stays flat or underperforms, it still does seem to actually move with the market on a levered scale, I think. So I'm in agreement there. Last question. What's your take on Sol making a second higher low? Seems Bitcoin went lower, thought Sol would also fall below 135.
Yeah, so I think what I've noticed about Solana is that it's basically moving one for one with Bitcoin. And I think for me, the reason why I moved into Bitcoin rather than Solana is because if I want to buy Solana, it's because I want to see it has a higher multiple, a higher beta compared to Bitcoin. And I think this just speaks to what I kind of said before, in that I think people are probably cognizant of some of the unlock / inflation. What we have seen is that meme coin trading has come back fairly aggressively. So maybe that leads to more DeFi volumes, more fees for Solana. But in my head, I just foresee those headlines happening in Q1 and people selling them. So yeah, it's putting higher lows, but it's also putting lower highs, as you can see there. I think it will probably match whatever Bitcoin does. I don't think it will necessarily outperform. Apart from random days where it's up like 10% or something like that will happen. But I think over the next 3 to 6 months, I don't see it outperforming Bitcoin. And I also think that, but I, over the next few years, I think it very, very easily could. I just think we're in for a slightly tougher few months.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like that. The only other thing I would say on Sol, which we also mentioned last time, is don't forget to look at the market cap of it and not just the price of it, because in market cap terms, it's already hit all-time high a couple of times this year, and it's just off all-time highs. And there's, as you said, there's like a ton of supply coming to market next year and continual like daily unlocks. So I think it's just important for me, like especially Sol, because it's been in such great focus this year. It's really important to look at it in market cap terms and not just in price terms.
Yeah.
Well, I think that brings us, that's the last question actually we had. So that brings us to the end of the show. I'm just looking over at my screen to look at the Bitcoin price.
If you wanted to have a bit more exposure, what would you own? Like if you were super bullish, what would you be buying right now?
I don't know. That's the thing I've genuinely found hard. Like beginning of September, I was bullish and I was trying to figure out what to own. And I think the best thing I could think of was really like Bitcoin and then levered Bitcoin, but I didn't want the liquidation risk. So I went to meme coins, and that I think is a sweet spot. I think there's a few coins in like the 200 to $800 million market cap range, which I think you could play for like a 3 to 5x on if things go really crazy. And that's what I would do. If I could somehow get levered Bitcoin without any liquidation risk, that would be my number one choice. But it's hard to find the right trade there.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think Bitcoin was an obvious one. I think for altcoins, Sui we mentioned on this show several times during that period, so I don't think we missed talking about that one. I do think Tau is one to take a look at, just given the market cap. I think maybe Aave could be a decent one. It's come back relatively strong, although it's very, very difficult to believe in too many altcoins just because they keep disappointing on these bounces. But it does feel as though the market wants to own mid-cap meme coins. They want to own meme coins that they think can go to $1 billion. That's what the market keeps on showing you that it wants to do. Whether you like it or not, that's what people are coming into crypto and buying at the moment. And it does feel as though those are probably the place.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I think that wraps up this week. And as I said, I was looking over at the Bitcoin price, and we haven't. Our combination has not tanked Bitcoin on this Friday, which is a good sign. So thanks everyone for tuning in. That was REKT Vision. We have one question for you before you guys go. So please let us know in the comments of your answers. Do you think we'll be range bound in crypto up until the election? So that's about 3 or 4 weeks away. Make sure you're following us on X, and we'll be back at the usual time next week, 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, 4:30 p.m. still British summertime. I think it's the last week before clocks change. But other than that, have a great weekend, everyone.